You should be grateful I didn't throw you away like garbage. Serena stood in the doorway, a trash bag containing everything she owned clutched in her hands. She was 16 years old, and the woman who had raised her was kicking her out. I know about the money, Serena said quietly. The trust fund. It was mine. Kiyoma's hand connected with her face before she could react. You have no right to question me. I fed you. I clothed you. Everything you have came from my mercy. Neighbors gathered on their porches watching. No one intervened. No one asked if the girl was okay. They simply stared at another family drama unfolding on a Tuesday afternoon. Serena walked away without looking back. She had nowhere to go and no one who cared. But somewhere in another city, a billionaire believed his granddaughter was living in luxury. Maddox Sterling was not born into wealth. He grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Detroit, sharing a mattress with 2 brothers, while his mother worked double shifts at a textile factory. By the time he turned 30, he owned his first building. By 40, he controlled a real estate empire spanning 12 states. Financial magazines called him a self-made success story. What they never wrote about was the price he paid for that success. His daughter Elaine was the only soft thing in his life. She had her mother's gentle eyes and a laugh that could fill any room. When Maddox's wife passed from cancer, Elaine became his reason to keep building, keep fighting, keep winning. He promised himself he would give her everything he never had. But life does not negotiate with promises. Elaine died during childbirth at 26 years old. The doctor said complications. Maddox heard only one word: gone. In a single night, he lost his daughter and gained a granddaughter he did not know how to love. Every time he looked at the infant's face, he saw Elaine. The pain was unbearable. Kiyoma stepped forward at the funeral. She was Elaine's half-sister from their mother's second marriage. The 2 women had been close, or so Maddox believed. Kiyoma held the baby in her arms and made an offer that seemed like salvation. Let me raise her, Kiyoma said. You're grieving. You're running an empire. A newborn needs constant attention, and I can give her that. I can give her a mother's love. Maddox wanted to refuse. He wanted to hold his granddaughter and never let go. But when he looked at that tiny face, all he saw was Elaine dying on a hospital bed. The grief was a weight he could not carry while also carrying a child. So he made a decision that would haunt him for 18 years. He handed Serena to Kiyoma. He bought them a house in the suburbs of Chicago. He set up a trust fund worth $3 million structured to release when Serena turned 18. He arranged monthly payments for living expenses, education, and health care. He convinced himself that money was love, that providing was the same as being present. Every month, he transferred funds. Every month, Kiyoma sent reports. The messages were always the same. Serena is healthy. Serena is happy. Serena is being homeschooled because she's sensitive to crowds. Maddox accepted these updates without question. It was easier than facing what he had done. But Maddox was not entirely absent. He tried to reach out more than once. When Serena turned 5, Maddox called Kiyoma to arrange a Christmas visit. He wanted to see his granddaughter open presents, wanted to hear her laugh the way Elaine used to laugh. Kiyoma's response was apologetic but firm. She's running a high fever, Kiyoma explained. The doctor says she can't travel, maybe next year. Maddox sent gifts instead. Expensive toys, beautiful dresses, books for children. He never received a thank you card. He never saw a photo of Serena with his presents. He told himself it did not matter. When Serena turned 10, Maddox insisted on a face-to-face meeting. He was getting older. He needed to see his granddaughter, needed to know she was real. Kiyoma arranged a phone call instead. A child's voice came through the speaker, small and hesitant. I don't want to see you. You scare me. Maddox felt those words like a knife. He asked why, but the line went silent. Kiyoma came back on explaining that Serena had emotional difficulties, that introducing a stranger would cause psychological damage. Maddox believed her. He believed because doubting meant confronting his own failure. When Serena turned 15, Maddox made one final attempt. He wrote a letter inviting her to visit his company headquarters to see what her grandfather had built to understand her legacy. Kioma responded by email. Serena is going through a difficult phase. Her therapist advises against major changes. I've attached a recent photo. The photo showed a girl standing in a garden face, turned away from the camera features impossible to identify. Maddox stared at that image for hours. Something felt wrong, but he could not name it. He filed the photo away and returned to his work. Work was easier. Work made sense. In business, Maddox controlled outcomes. With family, he felt powerless. So he retreated into what he knew, telling himself that money was enough, that Kioma would handle the rest, that one day Serena would understand. 18 years passed in this pattern. 18 years of silence disguised as protection. Then Arthur Vance asked for documentation. Arthur had been Maddox's lawyer for 2 decades. He handled contracts worth hundreds of millions without breaking a sweat. But when Maddox sat across from him to finalize the trust fund transfer, Arthur's expression shifted to concern. "We need current identification for the beneficiary," Arthur said. "A recent photograph, her signature, social security verification, current address. Standard procedure for a transfer this size." Maddox opened his mouth to provide the information. Then he realized he had none of it. He did not know where Serena went to school. He did not have her phone number. He had never received an email directly from her. Every communication for 18 years had passed through Kioma. His granddaughter was about to inherit $3 million, and he could not prove she existed. That night, Maddox called Kioma. He kept his voice calm, professional, the same tone he used in boardroom negotiations. "I need to speak with Serena directly. A video call to confirm her identity before the transfer." Kioma's response came quick, practiced. "She's not ready for that. You know how sensitive she is. Appearing suddenly after all these years will cause psychological damage. Let me prepare her first." "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. These things take time." Maddox had heard these excuses before. For 18 years he had accepted them. But something had changed. The trust fund deadline was approaching, and for the first time he realized that he had never once seen his granddaughter's face clearly. Not in person, not on video, not even in a photograph where her features were visible. "No," Maddox said. "I need confirmation now." The line went silent. When Kioma spoke again, her voice had an edge he had never heard before. "After everything I've done for that child, you don't trust me? This isn't about trust. It's about legal requirements." "Fine, I'll send updated documents tomorrow." Tomorrow came and went. So did the next day. Kioma stopped answering calls. Her emails claimed technical difficulties, family emergencies, scheduling conflicts. The excuses multiplied, while Maddox's unease grew into something he could no longer ignore. He sat in his office on the 15th floor, staring at the city lights below, and forced himself to confront a question he had avoided for 18 years. What if he had been wrong? What if the silence was not protection but concealment? What if his granddaughter needed him and he had abandoned her to a stranger? Maddox picked up the phone and called Arthur. "I need an independent investigation. Private firm, full resources. Find my granddaughter. Find out where she actually lives, what she actually does, whether she actually exists in the life I've been paying for." Arthur did not ask questions. He understood. The investigators worked fast. Within 72 hours, they delivered a report that shattered everything Maddox believed. The suburban house was still in Kioma's name, but property records showed no indication that a child named Serena Sterling had ever resided there consistently. School districts had no enrollment records matching her name or age. Medical facilities showed no patient history. The trust fund meant to protect Serena's future had been drained systematically over 18 years through fraudulent expense claims. Education costs for a girl who never attended school. medical bills for treatments that never happened, nearly $3 million gone, and buried in the final page of the report, one line destroyed Maddox completely. A young woman matching Serena's description and age had been identified at Hope Haven Shelter in Chicago. She had been living there for almost a year. She had no family contacts listed. She had told intake workers that she had been abandoned at birth and had no one in the world who cared whether she lived or died. Maddox read that line 3 times. Then he stood up from his desk, walked to his private bathroom, and vomited until nothing remained. His granddaughter was homeless. His granddaughter believed she was unloved, and he had made it possible by choosing comfort over responsibility, by sending checks instead of showing up, by trusting a stranger with the only family he had left. The next morning, Maddox Sterling flew to Chicago. He did not bring lawyers or accountants. He did not bring security or assistance. He brought only himself, a folder full of evidence, and 18 years of guilt he could no longer outrun. Hope Haven Shelter occupied a converted warehouse on the south side of Chicago. The building's brick exterior was weathered but clean, and a hand-painted sign near the entrance read, "Everyone deserves hope." Maddox stood outside for nearly 10 minutes before he could force himself through the door. Inside, the air smelled of institutional soap and reheated food. Rows of folding tables filled the main hall where dozens of people sat eating dinner from plastic trays. Some were elderly. Some were young mothers with children clinging to their legs. Some looked like they had simply run out of options. A staff member approached Maddox with a practiced smile. She introduced herself as the intake coordinator and asked if he needed assistance. Maddox explained who he was and why he had come. The coordinator's expression shifted from professional courtesy to guarded concern. "Serena doesn't receive visitors," she said. "She's made it clear she has no family." Maddox felt those words like a physical blow. His granddaughter had told these strangers she had no one, because as far as she knew, that was the truth. "Please," Maddox said. "I need to see her. I can explain everything." The coordinator studied him for a long moment, taking in his expensive coat, his polished shoes, the desperation in his eyes. Finally, she nodded and led him down a narrow hallway to a small meeting room. "Wait here. I'll ask if she's willing to talk." Maddox waited. The room contained only a table and 4 plastic chairs. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions in boardrooms designed to intimidate, but this small room terrified him more than any of them. The door opened. A young woman stepped inside, and Maddox forgot how to breathe. She had Elaine's eyes. The same deep brown, the same way they narrowed slightly when assessing a situation. But where Elaine's eyes had held warmth and trust, this girl's eyes held nothing but suspicion. Her hair was cut short and uneven, as if she had done it herself without a mirror. Her clothes were worn, but clean. She was thin in a way that suggested meals had been uncertain for a long time. This was his granddaughter. This was what 18 years of abandonment looked like. "Serena," Maddox said. His voice cracked on her name. The girl remained standing near the door, keeping distance between them. "The staff said some rich guy claims to be my grandfather. I told them I don't have a grandfather." "You do. I'm Maddox Sterling. Your mother was my daughter, Elaine." Serena's expression did not change. "Elaine, the woman who died giving birth to me, the woman whose family wanted nothing to do with the baby she left behind." "That's not true. I wanted you. I set up a trust fund for you the day you were born. $3 million. I sent money every month for your care, your education, your future." Something flickered in Serena's eyes. Not belief. Something closer to anger. $3 million. She repeated the words slowly, as if testing their weight. "I grew up sleeping in a storage closet. I never went to school. I wore clothes from donation bins while my aunt's real children had everything they wanted. $3 million, and I've been eating from soup kitchens for the past year. Maddox's chest tightened. Kioma told me you were being homeschooled. She said you were sensitive, that you needed special care. Special care. Serena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what she called it? Making me cook and clean while her kids played video games, telling me I was lucky she didn't throw me out on the street, reminding me every single day that nobody wanted me, that even my own grandfather refused to see me. I tried to see you multiple times. When you were 5, I wanted to bring you home for Christmas. When you were 10, I tried to arrange a meeting. When you were 15, I invited you to visit my company. And what happened? Kioma said you were sick, or that you weren't ready, or that meeting me would cause psychological harm. Maddox's voice dropped. Once she put someone on the phone who said they were you, a child's voice saying you didn't want to see me, saying I scared you. Serena stared at him. Her expression shifted from anger to something more complicated. That wasn't me. I never spoke to you. I didn't even know you were sending money until I found those bank statements. The room felt smaller suddenly. Maddox gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. What bank statements? Serena moved to one of the chairs, but did not sit. She leaned against its back arms, crossed, maintaining her distance. I was 16. Kioma sent me to clean her office. I found an envelope in her desk with account records. Transfers coming in every month, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, all labeled as trust fund distributions for my education and care. Serena's voice hardened. Education I never received, care I never got. I confronted her about it. What did she say? She slapped me, told me I had no right to ask questions, told me I should be grateful she hadn't thrown me away like everyone else wanted to. Serena finally sat down, her movements stiff with old anger. 6 months later, right before my 17th birthday, she kicked me out, said I was old enough to take care of myself, packed my things in a garbage bag and left them on the porch. Maddox lowered himself into the chair across from her. His legs would not support him anymore. Why didn't you go to the police, contact social services? Serena's laugh was bitter. And tell them what? That I was a foster kid whose family didn't want her, that I had no documentation, no school records, no proof I was anyone at all. Kioma made sure I didn't exist on paper. No birth certificate in my possession, no social security card, nothing. As far as the system was concerned, I was nobody. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Maddox looked at his granddaughter and saw 18 years of failure. Every check he had written, every update he had accepted without question, every excuse he had believed, because believing was easier than investigating. He had thought he was providing for her. Instead, he had funded her abuse. I'm going to fix this, Maddox said finally. Kioma will face consequences for what she's done. The money will be recovered. You'll have everything you should have had. Serena leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. You think this is about money? You think writing another check fixes 18 years of being told I was worthless, of believing that my own family threw me away like garbage? No. Maddox's voice was barely audible. No, I don't think that. Good, because it doesn't. Serena stood up, moving toward the door. I don't know you. I don't trust you. And I'm not going anywhere with you just because you showed up with guilt and a checkbook. She left the room without looking back. Maddox sat alone under the buzzing fluorescent lights, understanding for the first time that money could not purchase redemption. The legal process began the following week. Maddox retained Diana Ross, a criminal attorney with a reputation for pursuing complex fraud cases. Together with Arthur Vance, they assembled a team of forensic accountants and investigators. The financial trail was damning. Over 18 years, Kioma had withdrawn nearly $2.7 million from the trust fund through fraudulent claims, education expenses for private tutors who did not exist, medical bills for treatments never administered, living costs for a lifestyle Serena never experienced. The money had funded Kioma's real children instead, private school tuition for them, a larger house in a better neighborhood, luxury vacations documented on social media while Serena slept on a mattress in a converted storage room. Diana laid out the potential charges during a meeting in Maddox's hotel suite. Wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, child neglect, possibly false imprisonment given that Serena had been deliberately kept isolated from society without access to education or documentation. "We have enough to arrest her today," Diana said. "But I need you to understand something. Kioma's attorney will make this ugly. She's going to claim she sacrificed everything to raise a difficult child. She's going to say the money was spent legitimately, and she's going to point the finger at you." Maddox looked up from the document spread across the table. "At me. You abandoned your granddaughter to a woman you barely knew. You never visited. You never verified anything. You sent money and walked away." Diana's tone was not accusatory, merely factual. "A good defense lawyer will argue that your negligence enabled whatever happened, that you're equally responsible." The words settled over Maddox like a weight. He wanted to argue. He wanted to defend himself, but he could not because Diana was right. Kioma had lied and stolen and abused a child, but Maddox had made it possible. He had chosen blindness because seeing was too painful. "I know," Maddox said quietly. "I know what I did." The confrontation happened 3 weeks later in an interview room at the Chicago Police Department. Kioma had been brought in for questioning after investigators presented their evidence to prosecutors. She arrived with her attorney, a sharp-faced man who specialized in white-collar defense. Maddox was not supposed to be present for the interrogation, but Diana had arranged for him to observe through a two-way mirror. When Serena asked to be there as well, no one could refuse her. Grandfather and granddaughter stood side by side in the observation room, watching Kioma through the glass. It was the first time they had been together since the shelter. They did not speak. They did not need to. Kioma looked different than Maddox remembered. Her clothes were expensive, her hair professionally styled. She had aged well funded by money that was never hers. When the detective began asking questions, she responded with the same calm confidence Maddox had seen 18 years ago at Elaine's funeral. "I raised that girl out of the goodness of my heart," Kioma said. "Maddox Sterling abandoned her. He couldn't even look at her because she reminded him of his dead daughter. I took her in. I gave her a home. I gave her everything I could." The detective slid a folder across the table. "Then explain these transactions. Education expenses for schools she never attended, medical bills from doctors who have no record of treating her, nearly $3 million withdrawn from a trust fund meant for her care." Kioma glanced at the documents with practiced dismissal. "Those are legitimate expenses. Raising a child is expensive. Food, clothing, housing. It all adds up. She was sleeping in a storage closet. She had behavioral problems. She needed to be separated from my other children for their safety." Behind the glass, Serena made a small sound. Maddox looked at her and saw tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, tears of rage. "I want to talk to her," Serena said. Maddox shook his head. "That's not a good idea." "I don't care if it's a good idea. She stole my life. She owes me an explanation." Diana tried to intervene, but Serena was already moving toward the door. Maddox followed her, unwilling to let her face this alone, even if she did not want him there. The interview room fell silent when Serena walked in. Kioma's composure cracked for just a moment before she recovered. "Serena, you look terrible. Life on the streets hasn't been kind to you." Serena stopped across the table from her aunt. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Why, that's all I want to know. You had money. You had resources. You could have given me a real life. Instead, you treated me like a servant and then threw me away." "Why?" Kioma's attorney leaned forward to object, but Kioma waved him off. Something dark surfaced in her expression, years of resentment finally breaking free. You want to know why? Because your mother was perfect, Elaine. Beautiful Elaine. Elaine, who everyone loved, who could do no wrong, who Maddox adored while I was invisible. Keoma's voice rose with each sentence. When she died, I thought finally, I would matter. But no. Even dead, she left behind her precious baby. And Maddox poured everything into protecting you. Not me. Never me. Just the child of his beloved daughter. Serena stood frozen, absorbing every word. So yes, Keoma continued, I took the money. I took everything I could because it should have been mine. And I made sure you knew exactly how worthless you were because watching you suffer made me feel better about everything your mother took from me. The room was absolutely silent. Keoma's attorney had dropped his head into his hands. The detective was staring at Keoma with undisguised disgust. Serena stepped closer to the table. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. For 18 years, I believed there was something wrong with me. I believed I was unlovable, that I deserved to be abandoned, that I would never be worth anything to anyone. Serena's voice grew stronger with each word. But it was never about me. It was about you, your jealousy, your bitterness. You destroyed a child's life because you couldn't stand that someone else was loved. Serena turned to Maddox, who stood near the door. Her expression was unreadable. And you let it happen. You chose not to know. You sent money because it was easier than showing up. Every check you wrote bought another year of my suffering. Maddox did not defend himself. There was nothing to say. Serena looked back at Keoma one final time. You stole money from me. That can be recovered. But you stole 18 years of my life. You stole my chance to know my mother through the people who loved her. You stole my childhood. Her voice cracked. Those things never come back. No court can give them to me. No amount of money can buy them. She walked out of the room without another word. Maddox watched her go, understanding that the damage done to his granddaughter would take far longer to heal than any legal proceeding could address. In the interview room behind him, Keoma finally began to cry. Maddox felt nothing but emptiness. The legal system moved with cold efficiency. Keoma was formally charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and child neglect. Her assets were frozen pending trial, including the suburban house that Maddox had purchased 18 years ago. The court ordered recovery of all misappropriated funds from the trust, and forensic accountants traced what remained through years of extravagant spending. Approximately $300,000 could be recovered. The rest had been consumed by a lifestyle built on stolen money and broken promises. Keoma's trial became a brief sensation in Chicago news. A black billionaire's granddaughter raised in secret poverty while millions disappeared. The story had everything the media loved. Maddox refused all interview requests. He had no interest in turning his family's tragedy into entertainment. The guilty verdict came 4 months after the arrest. Keoma received 12 years in federal prison. Her own children, now young adults themselves, publicly disowned her. They had not known the full truth of what their mother had done. Or perhaps they had known and chosen not to see the same way Maddox had chosen blindness for 18 years. Justice, such as it was, had been served. But Serena remained unreachable. Maddox had arranged an apartment for her in a safe neighborhood. He stocked it with furniture, filled the refrigerator, left a credit card with no spending limit. Serena accepted the housing because the alternative was returning to the shelter, but she refused to see him. She did not answer his calls. She returned his letters unopened. The apartment became a comfortable prison. Serena had walls and a door and food she did not have to stand in line for. But she also had something she had never experienced before: emptiness. For 18 years, her identity had been simple. She was the unwanted child, the burden, the girl nobody loved. That identity had been painful, but it was hers. It gave her a story to understand herself by. Now, that story had been revealed as a lie, constructed by a bitter woman, and Serena did not know what remained underneath. She spent days staring at walls. She could not bring herself to enroll in school or look for work. The trust fund sat in an account with her name on it, but she could not touch it. Every dollar felt like blood money payment for years of suffering that no amount could compensate. The only person she allowed to visit was Ms. Diane, the counselor who had helped her during her months at Hope Haven. Diane was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who had spent 30 years working with homeless youth. She understood that some wounds could not be rushed. During one of their conversations in Serena's sparse living room, Diane asked a question that cut through the fog. "Who are you now, Serena? Not who they said you were. Not what happened to you. Who do you want to be?" Serena could not answer. She had never been allowed to want anything. Wanting led to disappointment. Dreams were for people who had futures. She had survived by expecting nothing and accepting whatever scraps she received. Diane did not push. She simply sat with Serena in the silence, letting the question settle. "You're not defined by what was done to you," Diane said eventually. "Kioma tried to turn you into nothing, but you're still here. You survived, and now you get to choose what your life means. That's a power she never had." A week later, a letter arrived that was different from Maddox's previous attempts. It was handwritten on plain paper with no company letterhead or legal formality. Serena almost threw it away unopened. Something made her stop. She read it standing by the window, afternoon light falling across the pages. Maddox did not ask for forgiveness. He did not make excuses. He wrote about his daughter Elaine, about the grief that had paralyzed him when she died, about the cowardice that had led him to hand over a baby he should have raised himself. He admitted that he had used money as a shield against pain, convincing himself that providing was the same as loving. He acknowledged that his willful blindness had enabled 18 years of abuse. The letter ended with 3 paragraphs that Serena read multiple times. "I cannot give you back your childhood. I cannot undo the damage that was done while I looked away. If you never forgive me, I will understand. You owe me nothing. But I want you to know that the trust fund is yours completely. I have removed all conditions and restrictions. You can use it, invest it, donate it, or burn it. Whatever you choose, I will support. This is not payment for what you suffered. Nothing could pay for that. It is simply what was always meant to be yours. I will be in Chicago for as long as you need me to be. Not as someone who expects anything from you. Just as your grandfather if you ever decide you want one. I failed you for 18 years. I will spend whatever time I have left trying to be worthy of another chance." Serena set the letter down and cried for the first time since leaving the police station. Not tears of anger or grief, but something more complicated. Something that felt almost like the beginning of release. The decision came to her slowly over weeks of reflection. She would not let the stolen years define her future. She would not become bitter like Kioma or distant like Maddox. She would take the pain she had experienced and transform it into something meaningful. Serena enrolled at the University of Chicago for the following semester. She chose social work as her major, focusing on services for homeless and at-risk youth. The irony was not lost on her. The girl who had been abandoned would dedicate her life to ensuring other abandoned children found their way. She also made a decision about the money. Most of it would fund a scholarship program for young people aging out of the foster system or living in shelters. Education had been stolen from her. She would make sure others did not suffer the same theft. The announcement ceremony took place 6 months later at Hope Haven Shelter. Serena stood at a small podium in the same main hall where she had once eaten meals from plastic trays. The room was filled with shelter residents, staff members, social workers, and a handful of journalists who had caught wind of the story. "This scholarship is named for my mother," Serena said, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. Elaine Sterling died before I could know her. For most of my life, I believed her family had rejected me. I believed I was worthless. Those beliefs were lies planted by someone who wanted me to suffer. She looked out at the faces watching her. Some were young people her own age, eyes carrying the same wariness she recognized from her own reflection. The Elaine Sterling Scholarship exists because I know what it feels like to have no opportunities. To believe education is something that happens to other people. To think your future was decided before you were born. Serena's voice strengthened. That's a lie, too. Your circumstances do not determine your worth. And as long as this fund exists, there will be resources to help you build the life you deserve. Applause filled the hall. Serena stepped back from the podium and found herself scanning the crowd. She spotted Maddox standing near the back entrance, half hidden behind a support column. He was not on stage. He was not claiming credit. He was simply there, watching his granddaughter, with an expression that mixed pride and grief in equal measure. After the ceremony, after the photographs and interviews and congratulations, Serena found Maddox sitting on a bench outside the shelter. The evening air was cool, and the street lamps were just beginning to flicker on. She sat down beside him without speaking. For a long moment they watched cars pass on the street in front of them. Two people connected by blood and separated by years of distance, trying to find their way toward something new. "I meant what I wrote," Maddox said finally. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to be here." Serena considered his words. She thought about 18 years of absence, about letters unopened, and calls refused, about the rage that still flickered in her chest when she remembered the storage closet and the donated clothes and the voice telling her she was worthless. "I haven't forgiven you," Serena said. "Not completely. Maybe I never will. There's too much time we can't get back." Maddox nodded. He had expected nothing else. "But I'm willing to try," Serena continued, "to get to know you, to see who you actually are instead of the monster Kioma invented. That's not forgiveness. It's just a beginning. A beginning is more than I deserve." Serena did not argue. She reached over and took his hand, feeling the rough calluses of a man who had built his fortune with physical labor before he built it with money. Her grandfather, a stranger, a man who had failed her and was trying to make it right. She leaned her head against his shoulder. It was not absolution. It was not the warm embrace of a family reunited. It was something smaller and more honest, a first gesture of trust from a young woman who had learned that trust must be earned slowly. Maddox put his arm around her, careful not to hold too tight. They sat together on that bench as the sun disappeared below the Chicago skyline, two silhouettes framed against the shelter entrance. Behind them, the hand-painted sign still read, "Everyone deserves hope." For the first time in 18 years, both of them were beginning to believe it.
Time didn't ask me. It just took you away. And no matter how far I reach, I can't touch you again. Time was quiet like a shadow. Didn't warn me it would steal. Every second turned to distance I was never meant to feel. You were right here in my arms once. Now you're somewhere out of sight. Just a memory I'm holding every single lonely night. Time was cruel, it took you far, left me staring at the dark. No matter how I try to reach you, you're beyond where my hands are. You're a world I can't return to, a goodbye I couldn't change. And I'm lost inside a moment that will never be the same. If I run through all the distance, If I chase you through the years, would I find you in the silence, or just echoes of my tears? Time was cruel, it took you far, left me staring at the dark. No matter how I try to reach you, you're beyond where my hands are. You're a world I can't return to, a goodbye I couldn't change, and I'm lost inside a moment that will never be the same. Oh, I would trade all of tomorrow just to have you here tonight. But time never looks behind it, it just fades you out of sight. Time was cruel, it took you far, left me staring at the dark. No matter how I try to reach you, you're beyond where my hands are. You're a world I can't return to, a goodbye I couldn't change, and I'm lost inside a moment that will never be the same.